Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Hopkins, and today I'm joined by somebody who I'm getting to know, more so here with everyone else, but we have a lot of strong connections we know from having our brief conversation before. So Jennifer Tarsney, really excited to have you on from New York Life, who, if everyone's followed me in the past, knows I've got very strong connections there. A big fan, big supporter. So Jennifer, and I think you said it's okay to call you Jen. Thanks so much for coming on the show here today.
Oh, Jamie, well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part of your podcast.
Yeah, so I typically start off with kind of, I guess, 3 opening questions, and then I can go anywhere else from there. The first one's just give us the 20 seconds for people who don't know who you are, what you do, the abbreviated version, and then we'll get into your whole story as we go.
Sure, great. So I am the head of the practice management team here at New York Life Investments, so responsible for delivering and developing our value add thought leadership. Anything around forecasting trends that our business should be looking at to trying to solve the problems that our industry struggles with. We really focus on trying to just be the best partner we can to financial advisors and their clients. That's
awesome. And then I typically go into 2 kind of icebreaker questions. So first one is food. That's the big opening one. It's the easier one, but whether it's your favorite food, favorite cuisine, something from your life, whatever speaks to you about food, I like to ask that because food's one of those things. It's different for everyone, connects everybody though at the same time.
Well, it is one of my favorite topics, so that is an easy one. I am a definite self-professed foodie. Love to eat out. That's been a little bit of a challenge over the last year, but I also do love to cook, so we've been doing a lot of that. I would say my favorite food is probably, basic pasta bolognese. I don't think there's anything better than a really good pasta bolognese. Although I am really known for my meatballs. They are, world famous. My mother-in-law actually swears it kind of helped her get through a tough cancer treatment. So they've taken on this mythical quality. But Italian, even though I don't have any Italian in my background whatsoever, we spend a lot of time cooking and eating Italian food.
Okay, that was going to be my next follow-up question. I was like, are you Italian? Because you got North Jersey, New York, you're making pasta bolognese and meatballs. I mean, that fits into the area, right? So
It does. But no, just I'm just real keen on their food and their culture. So, but can't claim to be part of them officially.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm actually not great at meatballs. I never, I do more just like, ground beef approach to things instead of really a true meatball. But I love pasta bolognese. It's probably one of my favorite things is to drink some red wine and then just, if I can have the time, just be chopping up and slow cooking all of that. It's a
for sure
very relaxing thing to do when I can have the time. When you were in New York before COVID time and could go out to eat, did you have a favorite restaurant in New York recently, or
So I'm a big fan. I don't know if you were ever in New York. Have you ever been to the James Beard House?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that to me was like the best experience. I mean, there's so many great restaurant experiences in New York, but what I love about James Beard is that you could literally go every night. It's a completely different experience, and it was wild. Like folks would travel from across the country to follow their chef who was going to cook there that night. So it was like a bunch of groupies and you sitting at a big communal table. It was like a rock concert, only the chef is the rock star. And to have the chef come out at the end and just talk about, their passion. Met chefs who were in our business and left our business to become a chef, which I thought was super cool. That to me is if once we get back to normal, I highly encourage everybody. If you get into New York, you got to get to the James Beard House for one of the dinners.
Do you remember, did you ever go when there was like a famous chef you knew that you were excited to see, or, somebody who then later on became more famous too?
I haven't, that's I think the crazy thing is I've never gotten into one of those big celebrity chef dinners. It's always been like the up and comer from South Carolina or somewhere, who is their life dream to come cook in New York. And it's such a privilege and to kind of see them make it. Yeah, I've never been to one of the big celebrity chefs one, but I've actually then traveled and we've gone to these restaurants, for some of these folks that come from out of town. We've done a little touring, and when we've come into their part of the woods, we've actually made it to some of their restaurants. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I used to, when I was traveling all the time, I would always use the James Beard Awards as my measure for finding the restaurants in new areas, right? So I would always search that too. And then funny enough, we had a chef that also has kids that go to the same daycare as me, Chef Ben Thomas, who I eventually ended up having my, I guess, I don't know what they call it, rehearsal dinner, right, at his restaurant. And he's been on like Beat Bobby Flay and all those things eventually now too. So that's my only like chef claim to fame. Well, actually, that's not true. My uncle is a very good chef, but he lives in the Netherlands, and I don't get to eat his food as much. So that's like my family's, that group of my family that are in the Netherlands. That's all they do is run restaurants, and they're actually excellent.
Oh, neat.
But I have not been there now in maybe 8 years or so.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's been a while. Yep. So yeah, reminds me I need to make a trip across the ocean.
We'll put all these things on our post-COVID lists.
Yeah. So the next question is, a fun one for me, because I started asking the guests on Framework this, which is, what's your first money memory? It's such a great question that we, as professionals in financial services, go and ask clients, and, we do research around. And then I was like, I need to start asking all the guests this. So for you, do you have a first money memory, good, bad, indifferent?
So, yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was just recently talking about this with my kids. I mean, I definitely talk way more about money with my kids than I did as a kid. And I think part of it's kind of telling, like when I had to really think about, okay, what did I think about money when I was a kid? And the reality was I was completely oblivious. I mean, like I really didn't think much about money. I remember asking for things and not getting them because we didn't have that kind of money. But I never really looked to learn more. And I think that's pretty telling when I think about, what I do now and some of what we're trying to do at New York Life Investments in terms of, improving financial literacy. I think I'm pretty typical, as a kid, didn't really think a lot about money, didn't know about money, never planned on working with money. And so, when I really think about, I had to think about like, what was, if I think back far, what's my first memory? And what came to mind was, and I'm probably going to date myself here, but, I remember being in elementary school and selling those world's finest chocolate bars. Mm-hmm. And, everybody of a certain age will remember the dollar bars. You come home with the box. You probably owed $5 before you even got the box into your house because you ate half them on the bus. And I remember the little envelope with all the dollar bills in it. And that was probably the first time I actually really kind of handled money and was responsible for it. So that's probably my earliest memory. But, I don't think money really became real to me until it was time for me to pick a college, right? And having that discussion with my parents about, okay, do you want to go to a state school and maybe come out debt free? Or if you really want to go to that private school, do you want to take on loans? And I think that was really my first kind of quote unquote grown up decision that I had to make about money.
Which one did you pick?
So I picked the state school. Yeah. I went the no, I'd rather have you kind of pay for this route. And it's interesting because now, fast forward and now my daughter is a junior in high school, my oldest, and we're kind of having these discussions and look, I grew up very middle class, very blue collar. My dad was a New York City cop. You know, she'll have some more college choices, but it doesn't mean that mom and dad are just, you know, ready to mortgage our futures, you know, so she can go, you know, to wherever she wants. It's the money discussion is definitely there.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I think the kids conversation is an interesting one, especially for people that are in the financial world, because I think we're more aware that we need to have conversations around money. And my kids are really young, and so I try to explain money to them. But my daughter's 4, and she's my oldest, and I have a 3 and a 1-year old. And what she really understands is how to make deals. So I don't think she quite fully grasps money, except she does get the concept of like, we need money to get stuff, and that like dad and mom go to work to get money. And so she does equate like us being like at work to getting more money. But she's really good at well, dad, let's make a deal. I'll do this, and in return, you'll put a quarter, and she calls them quarter dollars, which I think is funny because it is right. But like, I don't even know where she got that, but she says, and you'll put a $quarter in the piggy bank if I do X, Y, or Z. But she doesn't buy anything with them. She just likes that they're coins, and she collects them.
Well, that's great. I mean, look, I mean, that's amazing that she's even that knowledgeable. I mean, you think about kids today. I mean, first of all, they don't touch money. Yeah. I mean, they're buying things with their fingerprints on a phone. I mean, so, you know, to even know the quarter dollar, she's well advanced. And hey, negotiation skills will always come in handy. So that's a good skill early on for sure. I mean, you know, it's funny, like again, we say, hey, you're in the business, and you'd think that would generate more discussions with your children. I remember my daughter was probably about 6 or 7, and I was at a women's conference in our business. You know, one of the top women advisor conferences, where really unique experience in the financial services industry, where you're in a room with like 400 women, and that's rare, period. But it's certainly rare in this business. And I remember it was a woman got up and was speaking about, you know, again, how trying to bring more women into the business. And, you know, she looked across the room and asked us, you know, how many of your daughters can explain what you do? And everybody kind of put their hands down. Like, you know, it was like, ooh, I don't know if my daughter could explain what I do. And she really challenged us. And she said, you know, come on, you're our front line here. You have to go home and you have to start these conversations. And I remember, you know, going home and you know, trying to have that conversation and taking it to the extreme where, you know, I drove her to school the next day and tried to make her listen to Bloomberg in the car and was trying to explain, you know, corn futures or something to a 7-year-old. So that didn't go well. So your quarter dollar discussions are probably a little more effective. But yeah, I mean, look, even us, we have to be reminded, right? This is something that kids have to learn, boys and girls, not just girls. But it's, you know, it's certainly important, you know, especially when what we're talking about in terms of bringing more women into the business and bringing more women into becoming more comfortable with controlling the financial discussion and making financial decisions. You know, you got to start early. So.
Yeah, I was very much reminded, you know, I've got a girl now, 2 boys, and it was pretty, I mean, maybe my mind just gravitated to it because I knew I was having a girl. So like, you know, my mind then latched onto something, but I was reviewing papers for a journal. So I don't actually know if this paper ever got published, but I was reviewing for BQuest, which then has since shut down as a journal. So I don't know if it got published, so I'd have to find it somewhere else. But they studied, I think it did, but they were studying basically households and girls, boys, 2 kids, 3 kids, 1 kid. And what they were finding was, right, households with girls, single, or like 2 girls or 3 girls, they save a lot less for college for those girls than they were if they had 3 boys or 2 boys, right? Kind of a cross income. And I was like, wow, like that's a really disappointing outcome, because like I had started to believe, like, I was like, oh, this stuff will be better by the time I'm done. Like, my generation will be kind of like through a lot of this, like, inequality on finance. And I was teaching at American college then, and read that and it was like, wow, no, like the next generation is already halfway set up to be behind with money because the current generation is saving different and like preparing money lessons differently based on essentially if it's a female or male or, you know, however they're classifying that. But, you know, that's, and so like I was very cognizant, like, well, I need to be like extra vigilant for my daughter to make sure that like I spend time on these topics for her. So like it is probably true. She's probably not the equivalent 4-year-old when it comes to money, and that's a good thing for me.
That's a good thing, period. I mean, you know, you hear these things, and that's I think the scary thing, or the most disappointing thing, is that, you know, I'm in this business 26 years, and it's not really improved at all. Listen, I think studies show, I think there's actually less women in the business now than there were prior to '08, which is disappointing. But even when you look at, you know, attitudes around money, and there's already been a lot of work done, obviously, on the different generations, and you know, millennial women are just as likely to let their spouses make all the decisions around finances. They're actually more likely to let their spouses make the decisions than their grandmothers. So we've actually regressed a little bit, and you know, you're already starting to see signs, because the next generation now, the Gen Zers, are in college or coming out of college and just getting jobs, and it's just not getting better in terms of their level of engagement around money, their level of understanding. Literacy is terrible. I mean, financial literacy in this country is bad to start with, but amongst women, it's abysmal. I mean, a recent study just showed that 80% of American women couldn't pass a basic financial literacy test. So, I mean, that's you know, the wealthiest country on the planet. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, and that's getting set very early on too, because it's, again, I've done some of the research and read that too, which is right. I think it's women's math scores in the U.S. on like standardized testing is pretty close. And a lot of the ones entering colleges in some programs are actually better than their male counterparts on math. And there was a study that then looked at, I think, first and second year on financial literacy, though. And they were actually significantly behind the males, although math-wise, they were right about there. And it had, you know, it's kind of caught up or passed in some areas. And that's a really interesting dynamic, because at first you're like, well, all we got to do is have like school programs to teach literacy. That's, you know, one argument out there. But clearly that's not necessarily the issue here, because they're getting the math part and that's improved, but the financial literacy is tremendously behind. And again, that was very disappointing, because that's our college kids today, which means we've kind of set up the next 40 years for a group behind. And yeah, so we've talked about really disappointing things here, but we'll get to hopefully, you
It'll
know,
get better.
Yeah, still committed to making this better.
Yeah.
We'll get to that, because that's a lot of the work that you're doing now. But tell us a little bit. So your story, right? You did say you ended up you know, picking the state school, you know, to not take out more student loan debt. So congratulations. So what happened after that? What did you major in, and kind of where did you think career was going? Because it didn't sound like at 17 you were like, I want to go work in financial services.
Not at all. So I was a history major. And when I left school, I got a job in the fashion industry in New York, which I thought was very cool, and it was very cool, but the pay is terrible. There's you know, nothing like entry level pay in fashion. All right, so I kind of watched some of my friends who were in the financial services industry, who had money to like, do things like go on vacations and get summer houses. And I was frustrated, like, wow, I'm not making any money. I can't do these things. And when I told them, they were like, well, what do you make? And when I told them, they was like, whoa, you need to leave that business. Like, you need to come to our business. And I immediately thought that was insane. Like, I never in a million years thought I would be on Wall Street per se. But I had a friend who had a connection with a headhunter and said, just go meet the headhunter and see if they can do something for you. They sent me on an interview for an entry-level admin position at an asset manager in downtown Manhattan. I got the job. I'm like, and I joke now because as I interview folks who want to come into our business and I see their resumes, I don't even know how I got this job. I mean, I literally knew nothing about anything in terms of finance. So I got this job. It paid more than what I was making. So I figured, hey, what the heck? What do I have to lose here? It's a pay raise. And literally showed up day one just with no expectations, just knowing, hey, I'm making a little bit more money. Really fortunate, obviously, to land with good people who took an interest in me. At the time, again, this is 1995. My boss was a woman. Her boss was a woman. Our CEO at the time was a woman. I didn't realize that that wasn't normal. I thought that that was just, again, this was my first experience. I'm like, this is the way this is. Clearly was unique, but it was really a great opportunity. And I was very fortunate, like I said, to have people that took an interest in me and show me the ropes, and kind of progress through there. And then before you know it, like here you are, you're a couple of years in, moving up the ranks a little bit, getting some additional responsibility. I started in what we call relationship management on the asset management side. So basically the business managers who face off with or partner with the wealth management firms. So, basically all of the partnership arrangements between, an asset manager and a firm that employs advisors. Did that for about 13 years. In that time, got married, had kids, had 2 kids. I had done a lot of traveling and was kind of wanting to kind of stay home, not stay home permanently, but not fly around every week. So in the summer of '08, was offered the opportunity to become a wholesaler. So become an asset management, straight up salesperson in Manhattan of all places. Crazy Manhattan with some of the biggest and best advisors in the country. So it was a great opportunity. I was nervous about it, really nervous about it, but had again a good person who really encouraged me to go for it and kind of talked me into it. So landed in that role in like June of '08. And was told, hey, don't worry, the summer in New York City will be slow, but don't worry, in September of '08, everybody will come back to work, everything will be fine, right? So September of '08, here I am waiting for everybody to come back to work. And as we all know, the financial services industry kind of falls apart. But it was, I would say, definitely a pivotal moment in my career where, again, really interacting with some of the best advisors in the business, but also some of the best people in the business. I mean, I will tell everybody that's not a coincidence. I mean, the best advisors in this business are generally just fabulous, fabulous people. And I remember going through the fall of '08 and everything that happened kind of with them. And, learned more in those 4 months about the business than I know I had learned in my first 13 years in the business. And, just really saw what it took, how great it is to be an advisor, but also how challenging it is. And just kind of really appreciated that experience. I did that for 10 years. And then in late 2018, kind of came back into New York Life's home office to launch our practice management effort. So that's, I've been doing that now for a little over 2 years. Again, really kind of promoting this idea of doing research-based value-add programs where we're really trying to bring some new ideas or some best practices to advisors to kind of help them and help their clients have a better experience.
Yeah. So when you, so what kind of interested you in building out the practice management piece, right? Because it's it's a little bit of a deviation from where you were before. I mean, obviously they're all tied together, but it's a shift, right? Because it's that's the very much how do you help, advisors be better at what they do from like a practice, running their business, working with clients, all of that.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I am a self-admitted nerd. So I'm a big student of the business. I mean, I love reading about what's going on and what's coming and, what could be coming, and just really enjoy seeing people excel and what drives them, and what makes them the best. Um, I don't know if that's the kind of the built-in competitive nature that so many of us, in financial services kind of feel, but I really love to learn. So this idea of kind of being kind of a teacher or kind of a coach and helping folks get better is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. But I like also just kind of problem solving, right? So, what could we be doing better in this business, and really getting creative. And I think that's actually something that I think is becoming more and more needed and useful in our business. This idea of being creative. I don't think our business is necessarily known for our creative solutions. So, just seeing how clients' lives are, everybody's lives are becoming more complex, but dealing with the different generations and intergenerational wealth, and there's a lot more opportunity for creative solutions, and that definitely jazzes me, this idea of kind of doing things a little differently than it's always been done.
Yeah. What do you, I mean, as the self-professed nerd and, studying what's coming, I mean, what are some, what are some things that you're either excited about that you think are coming? Or, I mean, obviously you said some creativity growth would be exciting. Um, what else kind of excites you about the future of, the financial services profession right now?
Well, you know, I think the last year has really brought into focus a lot of what this business can become. Um, I as someone who has benefited so much from this business and had no idea it existed really when I was 17. I love the idea of bringing more, quote unquote, outsiders into our business, folks that didn't grow up in this business, weren't exposed to it. I love the studies on how bringing diversity onto teams improves outcomes. So I'm really excited about making this business look more like America. So it's not just women, but it's, folks from different ethnic backgrounds, folks that didn't grow up with wealth, because that's what this business, that's kind of what this business has been for a long time. So I think that's awesome, and really excited about seeing a lot of people who look on a day to day we consider to be competitors, but we're talking to a lot of fellow firms about how we make things better, and to kind of see that collaboration, because we all know it'll make us all better. So I'm super excited about that. Super excited. I'm also really excited about when we go out and talk to advisors. We've talked a lot about making things better for women clients. The receptivity to it. I mean, again, it just shows that this idea that our business is, that old stockbroker kind of mentality where, we just take and don't care about the client. That's so untrue. I mean, you see how personally vested great advisors are in their clients' lives, and how they're so interested in becoming better and making that personal connection, and they're so open to new ideas. I don't think people realize how important and impactful this business is, and I think we're going to spread that story to more people and have more people both join us, right, as colleagues, but also benefit from what they can learn from us, and I think, look, we'll all be better for that.
Yeah, that perception of financial services is real too, right? As you said, like it's the take, or distrust of the
Mhm.
industry. And there was a John Oliver bit, and this is now got to be, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. And he did a little bit on like financial service industry, and he made fun of this concept, right, of seeing advisors like at clients' weddings or graduations, and like literally was like made fun of that, how that obviously that never occurs. And I was sitting there at that time and I was like, I don't know if I know an advisor who's been in this business for 10 plus years who hasn't been
Right.
at a client's like wedding or kids graduate. Like it's not only like that's perception was like, oh, that is not how it is at all. And I was like, it's actually so much like that I probably couldn't find an advisor who hasn't been invited to some really deep level, meaningful aspect of a client's life. Like you do eventually, if you're good at it, you enter that like third level of trust where you become part of their right extended trust circle, and you're helping fund kids college and grandkids and
Right.
charitable and life insurance for when one spouse passes away, and it becomes really meaningful and personal. uh that's just an aside. I love the collaboration that's going on out there. We'll give a shout out because I know I mentioned it pre-recording, but we've got American College president George Nichols, a former leader at New York Life, and he's been doing great work there the last couple of years on bringing some of that diversity and showing the value of it for teams, and I know bringing a lot of people together through that. So that's exciting to see too, kind of a leader broadly across the industry pulling some of that together.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
Uh, and is it okay? I'm going to ask. I know that you obviously the women's piece of this is important to you.
Yep.
It's part of your story, it's part of your work. I always do like hearing. I mean, like we'll talk about some of the good stuff. We'll lead into that. But are there things that were challenges for you? Things you didn't like about the industry, or just professionally, or any stories you want to share along like the difficult part of this, because people don't always get a platform for that. If you don't want to go into that too much, that's okay. We can talk about the numbers are terrible, right? Like there's always an easy way out of this one too, but I like to at least offer that on the show. Like, is there something like we want to talk about there and give a platform so we can share some of those personal stories and like why it's meaningful for you?
I think, look, I started by saying I was fortunate to work for women who took a vested interest in me. And, one of the things we hear a lot is that, oh, there's not enough women mentors in this business. Well, there's not enough women. So, I mean, it's hard to generate, women mentors when there's not enough women. But I really would just beg my fellow, let's call us the, experienced, not the senior, the experienced women in this business. You got to take on the younger ones coming into the business. I mean, you've got to mentor 5, 6, 7, 8 young women at this point, because we're struggling to get them in, right? I mean, we struggle. You can't even get resumes. When we get them in, it is a fight to keep them in, because when they show up, they look around and often they're kind of the only, right? There's not a lot of them to connect with. And even now, I mean, we've onboarded young women remotely. They've never even physically met us, right? They've never even physically been in the building. So, to all of my fellow ladies with experience in this business, please go identify 5 or 6 young women who are currently here that you can, schedule monthly or quarterly calls with, just so they can pick your brain on the business, right? And think about, we got to hit them young. So you've got to go talk to the middle schools, right? It's not enough. We talk about, going to colleges. It's almost too late at that point. Like you really got to get into like those middle school career days. And I've been there, and trust me, it's humbling to stand in front of, 12-year-old girls. And when you say, oh, I'm going to talk about finance, and have them look at you like, okay, yeah, whatever. And to immediately check out, you're fighting to keep their attention. You got to bring your best sales game to keep them engaged. But this is the only way we're going to make it change, right? So I implore everybody, look, this business is great on so many levels. It's been great to me. It's been great to all of us. Pay it forward.
Yeah, that's a great message. I agree with you on the getting to, the getting into the schools and actually going there is really important. and sometimes it's going to the schools that aren't the best schools too. One of my good friends that's been on the show before too, Tyrone Ross, he does that a lot, and he's always pushing that you've got to go in the schools, you've got to see people, you've got to walk into the bad neighborhoods, and that's how we're going to change and impact those. So yeah, I'll second your message there too, of pay it forward and go into those schools and meet people. And yeah, I didn't even think about like how little interest, right, you might walk in and get from a bunch of young girls when you say I'm going to talk about finance right here. Like, that's so what have you like what do you actually like approach? What have you brought, like, when you've done that before? Like what successfully actually garnered some attention?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you asked that, because I'm vividly remembering one session. Look, I approached it at first like, hey, don't just think about financial services as being, I gotta love math and I gotta pick stocks, because that's so not what it is, right? It's about building relationships and listening to people and helping people. And I remember at one point saying, hey, it's a great business. It can be really lucrative. And all of a sudden there was this one, 12-year-old girl in front of me whose head like popped up, and she's like, wait, how much money do you make? Like, in front of a whole class. And I'm like, whoa, like, that's a little aggressive. And I'm like, well, I do well for myself, and it's provided my family with a lot of great things. And she's like, oh, okay, so you make good money. She's like, all right, I'm interested. And all of a sudden, like, she started taking notes, and I laughed. I'm like, okay, well, hey, it's one, gotta start somewhere. But I'll never forget her, because like her head snapped back. Like, all of a sudden she was all in.
Yeah. It's like, wait a second. So you're saying that there's a good there's a good opportunity here. This makes sense now. That's funny. So tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing today. Around both, like, trying to reach out to women, but also, as you said, get women to come this way. I think you mentioned. Well, I'll let you use the words there, but I like that analogy you gave.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've done a ton of research around women in investing, and we started by asking advisors like, hey, what do you need help with? And a lot of them said, I really struggle with women clients. And it's again, like we've said, we've talked about this for such a long time. It's disappointing to know that it's still there, but I was appreciative of advisors being honest and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this. So we went out and did a big research project across the US, where we interviewed over 800 women about their relationships with money, about their relationships with advisors. And we heard, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We heard some horrifying stories, and we actually did some focus groups in New York City where we brought actual women clients in, and they talked about some of their stories with advisors and how they felt that they weren't listened to, and in some cases they weren't, and they were ignored. But then on the flip side, you have women admit that they've checked out of that relationship with the advisor, and you say to them, hey, can't do that. I mean, we all know the stats, right? 90% of all women will be responsible for their own finances at some point in their lives. If tomorrow's that day for you, are you ready? And if the answer is no, well, then you have to own that. It is a two-way street. I mean, yes, advisors need to do better, right? And a lot of it, look, there are no advisors out there that purposely want to offend their clients, right? But we had more than a third of our women participants tell us that advisors are rude to them. So there's a lot that is small changes, little things that women are looking for. The language used, jargon. We use jargon all day long. They find it offensive. They think we're trying to talk over their head. A simple fix like speaking like a normal human, will help that connection. But again, it's really reminding women how important it is to know your financial goals, to know what you want to accomplish, because while money may not be everything, it certainly gives you a lot more choices. So to control that narrative, don't let somebody control it for you, because everybody has stories of the woman who wakes up widowed unexpectedly one morning and doesn't know anything about anything, or who gets served with divorce papers and isn't even sure where their accounts are, and just starts that negotiation from a position of weakness. So while we're out there absolutely sharing our findings with advisors and specific suggestions, I mean, I talked about jargon, but there's a lot of specific suggestions, little tweaks that advisors can do to make the relationship more engaging. We also, like I said, are really out telling women, you have to come to the table. You can't ignore it. And by the way, if an advisor is offending you, tell them. Right? I mean, they're not mind readers. When you stop showing up for meetings, they just assume you don't care. If they've offended you, call them and tell them. That's been probably one of the most surprising conversations we've had with women investors. Like when I have women tell me, oh, my advisor never returns my call. Okay, well, I'll give you the names of 25 advisors right now who will return your call within the next hour. Fire that person. Go someplace else. You do have a choice here, but you have to act on it, right? You can't just accept what isn't working for you and kind of bury your head in the sand, because too often that life event happens and you're not ready for it, and that's really unfortunate.
So, how do you get that message out to consumers and individuals, real humans, as you said, right? We can get messages to advisors, right? I mean, in the profession, we can do that. But how do you think we have to get this broader message out there? Or how do you think it's going to get out there? There might be two different things. So
yeah. So, I mean, look, you got to get the message out any way you can. But what we're really encouraging, advisors, to kind of bring out the olive branch, right? So go to existing clients, go to prospects, get their families involved, get their daughters, their granddaughters, their girlfriends involved, and say, hey, I want to be an education partner for you. We know literacy is tough. We can talk about just broad financial topics. We can make an education plan for you depending on what you want to focus on, but extend that olive branch and really offer up education, because that is actually the feedback we got from our women participants. If an advisor spent time educating me and really helped me educate my children, I would sing their praises to everybody I know. So it's a win-win, right? Go out, offer the olive branch, offer the education, because what's going to happen is you're going to wind up getting referrals. Right? We talk about going into the communities, going to the Girl Scouts, going to the schools, building educational profiles on social media, but giving first, right? So offering that education, and it's got to be in a specific kind of manner. What we heard from women is a lot of times literacy is so bad, sometimes they don't even know what they don't know. So they're intimidated. Like if you offer, education around, taxation and estate planning, a lot of women aren't going to come to that because they're not even sure they're going to understand word one. So, come with the offer of, we're going to talk about how to get your financial house in order. We're going to talk about the basics of budgeting. We're going to talk about, investing 101. We're going to talk about how to have the money talk with your parents. Because again, that is something we hear a lot. We saw straight on from our research that women have a blind spot to. They're not focused on how their parent situation could derail their financial future. And you see it's happening all day, every day. So, going out and coaching women and offering that advice on how to have the basic conversations, how to get, the basic idea of financial wellness kind of in place, invite them to the table and they'll come, and invite them also to bring their friends. They will bring their friends. I mean, we joke, as women joke, we don't go any place by ourselves. So, virtual or not virtual, we're bringing a girlfriend. That's even better, because that's how we're going to spread this, right? It's not going to be one-on-one. It's going to be one to as many as we can. And then just kind of keeping that dialogue going, dripping on women clients and prospects, and really encouraging them to engage their daughters young, right? Bring the daughters in. We've talked, about doing, virtual open houses. I've done that with advisors who have done, a kind of mom-daughter night where they brought a group of women who worked in financial services industry in, and had moms and their daughters come in, and we talked about what our business is like, and what you should be thinking about money wise, so doing all you can to kind of get out there and offer the education. You will absolutely get paid back.
Yeah. Well, I think I love those messages, obviously, as an educator. And anytime someone's like, educate, and then, the give first mentality there, and kind of extend the olive branch and bring people to the table. I think all of those are great messages. Probably regardless of what profession, industry, or issue you're trying to solve, right? They probably work well.
Mm-hmm.
And it is true, right? A lot of the research shows that women, not that men don't want to be educated, but women definitely respond, at least on, surveys and behavior around advisors, as wanting to see more education from their advisor, more so than men respond in that way. So I think it's, some of that might go back to the fact that there is a demonstrated literacy difference between the two groups, right? But it could be other reasons why too, but it is interesting that is, anytime we ask people about, right, Social Security and things like that, it's always, hey, I'd like for my advisor to talk more about that and educate more on it. So I think that's a very good and, based in research. So research-based, evidence-based things are always nice still.
Right. One group I'll highlight, that's a growing group here in the U.S. is this married breadwinners. So women who are either the sole earners for their house or the majority earners. And again, you would think, okay, well, they're making the majority or all of the money for their household. They've got to be a little more with it with finance. And we surveyed these women, and you just see kind of, the blind spots when it comes to money and financial plans. 40% of them don't have life insurance. It's like you're the sole provider for your family. If you don't have life insurance, that's really risky. Not focused enough on retirement. If you're the majority earner for you and your spouse, if you're not focused on retirement, who is? Like, you're it's going to be a problem, right? And they're so busy. What they told us is, I would love somebody call me out. Like, don't be afraid to be like, hey, pay attention here. You're not, you're missing this. This is important, and I don't think you're paying enough attention. Like, they're open to being coached. Maybe get a little more aggressive on the coaching and say, hey, you got to sit down and pay attention to this for a second, because this is important stuff. And I don't think you're seeing the full picture here.
Yeah. So I'd love to ask you this question too, which is something I've asked a handful of like behavioral people. I haven't been asking most guests, but I like this. I like this question. So have you ever personally kind of identified either like the planning gap, the behavioral aspect, the literacy piece for you personally that you've had to overcome, or that you're working to get better on? Is there anything like that you've ever identified for yourself when it comes to finance?
Oh, sure. We started this conversation like I didn't know anything about money as a kid. I showed up in this business. I didn't know anything about money. And I worked for an asset management firm. And I will tell you, my first couple of years in the business, I did not take advantage really of our 401k. Like, I fell right into that, right? And we still see that today. I mean, when young men start careers, they go right into the 401k. When young women start careers, they either don't go into it or they go into it in baby steps, which is just so wrong, because we all know the sooner you start, the better. I did that, right? I mean, I worked in the business and I did that. So that really was, again, when I look back and it was, 1995 to 2000, like, holy cow, like what a miss, right? I mean, those were good times in the market. It's like, so, and I didn't participate in the manner that I should have. And, lesson learned. And that's why, really passionate about doing better.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to save more and save sooner.
So, cognizant of time here, we've done a great job moving through. The next piece is, I'd love to just hear maybe one, or I think we got most of this, but when you think about a little bit longer term, if you're successful on this, what's the long term outcome? What's the impact that you want to have? Just broader, and we don't have, I think that we've been covering that, but I'd love to just at least make sure I ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, just look, to summarize, can't have 80% of women failing financial literacy tests. Okay, so you gotta at the very least equal the guys, but let's do a stretch goal. Okay, like let's say that the majority of women can pass a financial literacy test. That should be our overarching goal. Ultimately, we need more women in this business. I mean, you can look at the numbers. Being a financial advisor is a great gig. I mean, I've always been on the asset management side. I've had plenty of advisors ask me, why didn't you become an advisor? Never even occurred to me. If I could do it over again, I would have loved to have gone that route. So whatever the numbers are, what are they, 13, 14, 15% women? That's crazy. It's got to be half. I mean, it should reflect the population. So I don't know if that's going to take a long time to get there, because it's not an overnight fix. But, within 5 or 10 years, that number has to be 25, 30%. It just has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one, as you said, because it really can't change overnight, right? There's
Right.
Even all the focus on it in the world couldn't move it quickly, because you're still going to have a slow drip in, and you'll have this large group in there for a long time. But it also hasn't moved much. As you said, it might have actually gotten worse compared to 15 years ago or so. I think one of the points you made earlier is I am very much of the opinion, I think we still need more, women in leadership roles too in this profession. I've seen some numbers on intro level hires isn't all that different for the industry. But then when you go 10 years, 15 years in, you see who moved up to management and leadership. It's really abysmal numbers. Really kind of disappointing across the board. So I know that, and I think people have to be, you actually have to be cognizant of that and purposeful on it. As you said, resumes can be hard to get. We know there's some of the issues where, women won't apply to jobs, right, unless they think they're 100% confident, and men are just like, sure, I can do 5 things on that list, so I'm going to apply. And I've seen that. I've opened up the general openings for jobs, and I'll get like 15 applicants, and 14 of them are a male. And then I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. So we've got to go find people, and you've got to then go out to networks and reach out to people. And a lot of times people don't think about that, but it is, if you want to attract the right talent, sometimes you have to go to where the talent is, where the people are. So whether it's, high schools, colleges, networks, but reach out, find people to bring them into this profession.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a line. I actually had a senior woman at New York Life say last week that we have to, Wall Street's known for its bro culture, and we have to do a better job of creating the female version of the bro culture. And I'm like, she's right. And to your point, yeah, you have to go out and find those networks and create the networks. And I mean, we're going to do it. That's it. Just draw the line in the sand and make it happen.
Well, that's a great one to close on, right? You're going to do it. So for people listening today, what's the best way to engage with you or your team or find you?
Yeah, sure. So please feel free to find me on LinkedIn, but also visit us at NewYorkLifeInvestments.com. We have a practice management page where you can see all of our content, and there's even a little button where you can click the button and you'll connect right to us, and we can engage with you. So come find us. All of our research and the majority of our tools are right on the website, so please come take a look. And we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear what's next. What else can we be helping you with?
Yeah. Well, Jen, I'm looking forward to seeing what's next too. So I'll be watching. I really appreciate you taking time out to spend some of your time with me here. And for all the listeners, I want to thank you and all of them, right, for taking part in this. And, look forward to everything else you're going to do. Love your passion here today and the impact you're having. And, thanks for leading a really important, charge in this profession to making things better.
Oh, well, thank you. And I really appreciate you having me and giving me my soapbox here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I love that term, soapbox, right? I guess that, there was probably a box that had soap in it and people stood on top of it at some point. But now we have our Zoom box, right?
That's right. Right.
Well, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Jen, thanks so much. Thanks, everyone, for watching this week's episode of the Framework Podcast.